Recent developments in India have reignited long-standing fears among minority communities, particularly the Sikhs in Punjab and the Muslims in Jammu Kashmir. The consistent undertone of cultural hegemony and political suppression under the guise of national integration is not only disturbing, but reflects a systematic attempt to erase the rich pluralistic ethos that once defined the Indian Union. The Sikhs in Punjab, a community with an unparalleled contribution to India's history and defense, increasingly feel sidelined. Allegations of demographic engineering through the strategic settlement of Hindu populations from other states are not mere paranoia, but stem from a historical pattern of diluting regional identities. Similarly, the abrogation of Article 370, which stripped Jammu Kashmir of its special status, was carried out unilaterally without the consent of its people. This has fostered deep resentment, with Kashmiri Muslims fearing a targeted cultural invasion and dispossession. The recent Pahalgam incident, where victims were allegedly targeted based on religious identity, underscores the grave security and communal fault lines widening under the current regime. While India hastily pointed fingers at Pakistan, suggesting the attack was inspired by statements made by the Pakistani army chief reaffirming the two-nation theory, it conveniently ignored Pakistan's call for a neutral international investigation. This response is symptomatic of a growing trend. India increasingly rejects dialogue, transparency, or accountability, preferring instead a rhetoric of hyper-nationalism and blame. Historically, the ideological foundation of Pakistan was built on the vision of thinkers like Sir Syed Ahmad Khan and Allama Iqbal, who argued that Hindus and Muslims, due to stark differences in culture, religion, and worldview, constituted two distinct nations. Its relevance echoes today as India's internal dynamics reflect the very fears that once led to the partition. India's so-called secular think tanks and media outlets have devolved into echo chambers of state propaganda, often vilifying minorities and suppressing dissent. The mainstream narrative is increasingly filled with hate, creating an environment where communal suspicion thrives and any expression of minority identity is seen as disloyalty. Meanwhile, the reality on the ground paints a grim picture. Over 80% of India's population struggles with poverty and lack of access to basic necessities, while an elite 2% amass disproportionate wealth and power. Yet rather than addressing these systemic inequalities, the Indian state chooses to deflect, distract, and demonize. India's current behavior on the global stage mirrors a superpower complex without the corresponding social cohesion, economic strength, or moral grounding. It seeks to emulate powers like the United States in assertiveness, but lacks the institutional maturity and internal stability required to wield such posture responsibly. The situation demands international attention and a collective call for justice. If India wishes to preserve its unity, it must return to the path of inclusivity, truth, and mutual respect. Denying legitimate grievances, silencing voices, and dismissing calls for impartial investigations will only result in sufferings, both economic and reputational damage, it pretends to deny.